So earlier, I just got done watching back to back the last two episodes of Atlanta, and I'm just beside myself. Fendi, like the bag. This is the I Refuse podcast. So I started with episode 3, I believe, The Man with the Tree. What in the entire dog fuck? So, this is Mr. Foxy, the I Refuse podcast. I'm going to switch it up a little bit and continue my Atlanta season 3 review. As I go through the rest of the season on YouTube. So, heads up, there'll be some spoilers. Y'all asses should have been watching it, caught up by now, since everybody's still in the house and streaming is where it's at. So, the Man in the Tree episode starts with the 4 main characters walking down the street, with Earn telling Paperboy and the rest of the gang, or telling them there's a billionaire that he knows of that could possibly help invest or propel their careers. Paperboy is not convinced because, people talk shit all the time. That's nothing new. So they get to the house according to the instructions that Earn has. And it doesn't, from the exterior, it doesn't look like it's a billionaire's house. And I'm looking around at the neighborhood as they're walking, and I'm like, this is pretty odd, because these houses look like West Baltimore row houses. No shade. So they get to the house. They're still in Europe somewhere. I'm assuming the UK. A woman opens the door looking like she had just been doing some chores or whatever. The dialect is not the best for them, so they're trying to make out what she's saying, and they don't really get the lingo. And, the rest of the gang behind her are looking at the kitchen area where she is, the condition of the first room, and they're like, there's no fucking way this could be right. At some point, a guy comes down from the steps and introduces himself, and, Earn and this guy recognize each other. So apparently this is the right place. They make, as they go up the steps, the condition of the house looks like it's not even finished. It literally looks like the scene of a Resident Evil game where it's just like missing walls, missing drywall, missing flooring, just all kinds of mess. They get up to a narrow hallway and get to the end, and the guy puts in the code, they have a conversation or whatever, open the door, and now it looks like the house of a billionaire. So the rest of the episode is essentially the 4 of them going in separate directions throughout this house. Paperboy ends up with this apparently this rich group of guys at a poker table playing a card game. Darius ends up in the kitchen speaking to an Asian woman or Oriental woman of some kind, who's under the assumption that because he's black, he's trying to hit on her, because in her history, there is a pattern of black guys always trying to pick her up or hit on her or get with her. Darius just wants the gin that's on the kitchen counter behind it. So there's a mistake or a misstep. Van ends up with getting connected to a guy that at first her and Earn are walking down with the billionaire guy to this dormitory type room or living quarters type of situation. As they're going to that situation, the billionaire informs Ern Van of an artist he is investing in, and as collateral, I guess, he gets to stay in this room just to focus on his art. And they go into the room, Ern Van and this British billionaire guy. And, they meet the artist who's like this young black kid, and they see his artwork around, and he shows them this first piece. And I got the feeling that this is going to lead in some direction where it's just like, okay, this artwork just isn't hitting. Like, you have this kid that's sitting on a crate or a box of some kind, just stapling random shit to, could be particle board, could be canvas, that honestly you and I could have made in high school. It's not cohesive. It's just literally him stapling shit to this board up against this wall. And then at some point, I guess he tries to explain it to the three of them. They have a weird look on their face, which is understandable because they're not seeing it, and I'm not seeing it either. At some point, he shows them a different piece. And there's this billionaire British guy. It's literally a picture of an old white guy wearing a Supreme shirt, wearing a Supreme hat, but he has nothing else on. And he has his entertainment center just out in the open, and he's outside. Not a whole lot of context or background to it. Isn't tied to something that would resonate to anybody looking at it, even me. And, Ern has a look on his face. It's just like, okay, none of this is making sense. So as the night goes on, he's not really feeling, the artist or this guy a whole lot. And at some point, as they're like in the little hallway, Van ends up someplace else, starts entertaining one of the partygoers at the party. Paperboy is still upstairs in the poker game, and he's essentially surrounded by three sharks. Now, what I mean by that is like, when you involve yourself in a pool game, and it's a parallel to a poker game, to where like you are being distracted by a story, or distracted by an anecdote of some kind that makes absolutely no sense. It could be a scary story. It could be something completely made up. It could be something that is could very well be true, but the end just doesn't make any sense. It's part of a ruse to get you to like shell out more money on the table. Raise the stakes, so to speak. So the story that Paperboy is being told at the poker game by one of the men is that he comes across a ghost, and he's propositioned by this ghost of some kind. And it just makes absolutely no sense. Because why is the ghost, how do you know the color or the race of the ghost when all ghosts are white? I mean, so it's weird, but this guy works the story into a part of the poker game at a point where Paperboy is comfortable. Paperboy having had all of this money from the second episode, unloads all this money on the table because he's feeling like Mr. Big Time at this point. So he buys all these chips, or buys all these chips. The guy takes, or the house takes all the money. Now, mind you, this is a red flag when I knew, they went to the table. You're at a poker table far away from the rest of the party with 3 other people, and they have their own card dealer. You just met these people at a house party. And they're drinking, they're socializing or whatever. And by the time that they got to the poker table, Paperboy and this white guy that was telling the story had a conversation leading up to this poker table where he, when he first met the guy, he told him that he had some tree. He wanted to show him some trees or a tree or some kind, and Paperboy thought he was talking about 420. Well, Paperboy being excited about 420, excitedly follows this guy. Well, it turns out he was talking about this big ass tree behind the house, and Paperboy is pissed. So at some point, that shit goes left, and he ends up at the poker table. But going to Darius, because I'm going to be circling around to the 4 of them individually, because they're in separate parts of the house. A follow-up on Darius's experience is that, after the situation with the Oriental woman, he's a little thrown off, but in comes into the scene this another British guy with this yellow hat, and there's, they're talking about racism and what he heard and all this stuff about this woman. So needless to say, at some point, things escalate later on when the guy in the yellow hat sees the Asian woman later on. This is after the ghost story at the poker table with Paperboy and his group of scenes. Like one by one, in each individual scene at this party, things just go left. People, there's a group of people around the guy with the yellow hat, and they charge at this Asian woman under the pretense or the perception that the guy in the hat put out that this Asian woman was racist. And one thing I took away from that is that a lot of what the guy in the yellow hat said was his own opinion and his perception, which was far and above and beyond what Darius was saying at the kitchen table earlier in the episode. And, they essentially corner this woman upstairs. While that's going on upstairs, he eventually breaks away. But he catches up with Ern and the billionaire guy in the hallway after Ern had sat with Paperboy after Paperboy realized that he had got bamboozled at the poker table about this stupid ass ghost, during this stupid ass ghost story, trying to find the man that took his money. Like, the people at the poker table collectively got up, walked out the room, and he was just sitting there. So he got took for all his money, pissed as hell. At some point, while trying to find this guy, this random white woman ran by and took his hat. So he's doubly pissed. At some point, he runs into Earn, who is sitting on the opposite side of a wall of glass that surrounds a pool. Earn is having a decision in his mind about this billionaire guy. He doesn't see the talent for the guy, but he understands the arrangement. But he's having, I guess, a bit of an ethical or moral dilemma about this thing long term, where it's like, should I tell this billionaire guy that this black guy does not have talent, he's just wasting his money, which could ultimately stop short any potential investment from this billionaire guy into Paperboy. It's one of those things where it's like, do I want to cut off my nose to spite my face? And I was like, I totally saw that off rip. The two of them, Paperboy and Earn, have a bit of a conversation to where they each give each other a piece of enlightenment about their individuals, the opposing situations that they're going through. Paperboy is of the attitude of, historically, this is a situation where white people have done this for years, where they kind of do some kind of posturing, or there's some posturing involved, some kind of benefit, like, oh, hey, this is really just a pony show. And if that's the case, just let the man, if he wants to waste his money into this black kid artist, then let him do that. Van thought about it for a little bit, and with consideration to how hard it had been for them up to that point, and how he believes in Paperboy even more, and that's his cousin, and he's thinking about his own situation with Van and how he wants better for him and her and their daughter that they share. He thought about it, and as he's looking over, he thought about it as he's looking over through the glass and sees Van walking along the pool with the guy. They lock eyes and smile, and she pushes the guy in the water. I was like, oh, I get it. On some level, he was convinced to go try to, I guess, appease or appeal to this billionaire guy and take him up on his offer. After he wasn't too keen about it. He made up a lie about involving Doja Cat and her management team at first, before walking out of the room and then crossing paths with Paperboy. But then he started to have a change of heart, and went to go try to find this guy. But as he's coming down the same hallway, doubling back towards this black kid's room, he sees a framed picture on the wall. And it looks like it's from the 17 or 1800s. Well, it could be early 20th century. It's a photo of a group of white men holding what looks to be a certificate or a banner of some kind um, at a grand opening of a bank. And in the background of the photo to the very left, almost out of frame, there is a black guy that looks to be a slave of some kind. Yeah. Not feeling this. Not like feeling the vibe of this whole party. Yeah, we're probably gonna back out of this. So as he's talking to the billionaire British guy, the black kid is once again like near the doorway, and they're trying to convince Ern to like give in, but at some point Darius comes through the doorway, and he's like, "Yeah, we may want to get out of here because shit is about to go down." And in the background upstairs, you hear them doing, the group of people he was with, doing God knows what to the woman for what's perceived as racist attitudes and racist behaviors. Meanwhile, Paperboy eventually finds the guy that bamboozled him at the poker table. But he can't get to him because the guy's in the bed facing the other side of the room, pretending to be asleep, not moving or anything, and Paperboy is yelling through the sliding glass door that's closed. All right, so you won't give me my money. All right, so how about I go out here and cut this tree down since it matters so much to you? Which that too probably was a ruse to make him feel comfortable. So you're not going to give me my money. I'm going to start taking shit. And you're just going to have to deal with it. So they start ransacking, just taking random shit, getting into the cab, laughing, like looking at each other. And in one of the front seats is the guy with the yellow hat. He turns around, smiles to all three of them, and gives Paperboy back his hat. And it goes quiet. And then the episode ends. But a mid-credit scene, Ern calls Van, and Van ignores the call. So I'm sure there's something that's going to come from that. So that episode was interesting. There were bits and pieces that I took away that, Atlanta for the most part, whether it's in the dialogue or something visually, something non-verbally, you take a piece from it. This episode, what I took from that stuck out to me the most, aside from that photo on the wall and what that means in the storyline of Ern and the billionaire and the possibilities, or what it all means, what that picture really means versus what the billionaire is saying. As to the sincerity, there was a scene in this episode where after the group chases this Asian woman upstairs or to another room, there's a guy that comes out of nowhere and sits with Darius, and they have a spiritual talk about racism, and how it's like capitalism, which the shared connection is that for something to be of value, it has to mean that something else is of lesser value. Bitch, I ran so fast to my notes app on my iPhone to catch that quote because it's like, it all makes sense to me. And especially, as I've said on the podcast more so on the streaming side, because I don't want YouTube to be canceling none of my shit. I really let loose on the podcast to the best of my ability, sharing experiences, and from that, my knowledge, which there's no arguing with experience, correct? So, as that sort of things becomes more nuanced as time goes on, the one thing that is shared throughout history is that we're always deemed less valuable, something to be disrespected, something to be fetishized, which on the front end, you don't even get it because you're just so caught up in everything, the feeling or the chemical feeling that comes with being wanted and having attention. You don't really pay any attention to the fallout or everything that comes with it. You're something to be used, you're something used for gratification, used for posturing, used as to fulfill somebody else's need. But once things change, what comes to the surface is something that's always been there, and that's disrespect. And you lay on top of that the privilege that comes with not being the marginalized demographic. And I was just like, wow, that hit me hard. That was a really good episode, and I like so far how they're kind of, with every other episode, there is a connection. I know the next episode was more in line with episode 1, where they tackle, theories, hysterical theories, and they kind of dance with the possibility of what if. So for the next episode, the Big Payback, I had a little bit of a clip going into it, but I didn't get the context of it. So for the Big Payback, none of the main 4 characters are in the episode. Just like with the first episode where, you had the Lanier Lake theory examined or brought in the opening sequence, and then the rest of the episode 1 was about the murder of the black foster kids by the lesbian couple. Which there was a scene in that where I was just like, did that actually happen with the caseworker? But with the Big Payback episode, segue, they got Justin Bartha from The Hangover in the lead. And I was just like, okay, where is this going? And it typically, when I watch Atlanta episodes, it takes me a little bit. But I want to say this is probably the first season where they actually pull in like inspiration from real stories. The Florida Man thing, I think that's more an urban myth, but the Big Payback was about reparations, and how not only reparations, but the alternate reality that would come with that, and how white people are essentially the underclass, and from that they start to feel what we all go through, of how your livelihood, your family, everything you've known about your reality and what it is can change in a matter of days. and how you're essentially resorted or minimized down to nothing. And that was about 10 minutes into it. My mouth was on the floor because I was like, ooh, like this black woman, there were some funny parts, but she was not letting up. And on top of that, like, she went from she went from serving him papers at his house to actually moving family and moving into his place and having a cookout with family outside of his place. To showing up at his job, which was thrown in there. Literally putting on a public display that made everybody else at his job look at him crazy. And at the same time, this situation is playing out for other white people in the episode. It's made the news. Other people are just being served, and other white people are being served, but also black people at his job are also getting their money from being ancestors of black people that were enslaved by these white people, by ancestors of white people in town. I was just like, could you imagine? Could you imagine if that were to happen? Like, realistically, like in this life. Like, that would flip a whole lot. Shout out to Killer Mike for his perspective and his insight as he's going around. But this episode made me think of him when he was on Bill Maher's show. I don't know whether it was recent or a couple years ago, where he had quoted Dick Gregory to the effect of, when it comes to the police, if defunding them may not work, but if you start to penalize against their pension, you will start to see a de-escalation and derelict behaviors, detrimental, dangerous behaviors, especially towards unarmed black kids and black people. Like, money, the cliche is that, it doesn't buy you happiness and it can't get you this. It can't, it's the root of all evil, shit like that. But money does make the world go round. Like, people will start to realize and have an epiphany once, money starts getting taken away. They'll start to do better. They'll start to perform better. If there were a tighter box or a tighter boundary around money, more, making it more contingent upon performance, having more parameters in place, a balanced system where, for each infraction, we're not even going to waste additional money putting you on paid leave or putting you on paid vacation for 6 to 12 weeks or 4 to 6 months while we investigate. We're actually going to bring the hammer down that first week, whether it's the week you get paid or the week we close out time cards, and we're going to start taking money away, either from the here and now or on the back end with your retirement. Oh, people will fall in line quickly. Um, as more stuff comes out, particularly about New York cops, as if you need another reason, around their handling of the Brooklyn NYC subway attacks. The time and energy that was put into that story, and the reality that there was a slow response time, yet the powers that be want to throw more money into the NYC police, when the reality is that there has to be tighter or strict enforcement and a performance system. There has to be strict regulations that go into encouraging or enforcing more fucking neighbors. They go into better performance and more conscious training. Like, you have all these police, yet there's like a litany of issues they had in responding to this situation. And anybody that's seen New York City or been to New York City knows there are cops everywhere. There was a situation in Times Square, and I've been to Times Square, cops everywhere. And most of them, and when I say cops everywhere, I mean, like, let's say I'm a cop. There's also a cop here. There's a cop right here. And there's a cop right here in Times Square. And there was an incident that happened at Times Square, probably one of many. Yet the process from the investigation to actually finding the guy was slow. With all those cops, like, essentially letting the person get away. Like, all those cops are down there, most of them, to catch the boosters. And I didn't know that at first, but the time I was in Times Square, I ended up, like, walking away from Broadway, because we were up there to see Brandy during her week starting in Chicago, the Broadway play. Amazing, by the way. And we were walking, just taking in the sights and stuff. Somehow we managed to be, like, I guess, in the retail section. And I was like, why is this guy constantly unraveling this blanket of purses and then, like, closing it back real fast? And I look over my shoulder and there are cops there. That's why. I ended up on Booster Row, I guess, unofficially. But still, strong police presence, a lot more stronger than Baltimore. No shade, but let's be real. Like, I'm from Baltimore, and the only times I see the most of cop presence is when they're all throughout the middle of the damn street guiding traffic in front of functional traffic lights. But you can get, gang at the harbor, and it will take them forever to solve that. But let a baseball game be going on, or nothing be going on, but they're all out in the middle of the street guiding traffic, getting pissed at the traffic. We're not the reason why you're out there. But the point is like, you have all this money, but you don't have the what's the word I'm looking for? You don't have the I wouldn't say the talent, but you don't have the standard being met. You know, commensurate with the money and the budget you're putting in. You're throwing at the officers and stuff. And as long as I've been alive, like NYC police, the stories, and the miscarriages. But yeah, like they had a strong enough presence in the subway, and I know this because A, I've been to New York a handful of times, and B, you see countless videos of them just being everywhere, just kind of bothering people. Yet and still, this was able to go down, and the guy was able to get away. They caught him. It took almost a week, but from the stories coming out as to their place and their slow speed to get this guy, it makes you wonder. So going back to the episode, the Big Payback episode, I watched it and I was just like amazed and excited, and also, you know, educating myself as to what this possibly could mean in reality, where you could literally fleece white people financially. You know, Justin Bartha's character was ultimately minimized socially, financially, economically. You know, he was here he was, a man that was going through his separation, had his daughter from time to time, had a pretty decent job, and the moment he gets served papers by this black woman, you know, it goes completely left. And this situation, this experience is a shared experience with other white people that he works with at a company where there's also black people. And as this unfolds in the episode, there is a shift in I guess power dynamic where, you know, socially we're always the party that is defenseless, vulnerable, targeted, and asked or put in a position where we don't know what to do. But in this episode, the tables have turned, and Justin Bartha is the one asking the questions, is nervous, is paranoid, doesn't know who to turn to, doesn't know who to trust, is under a huge magnifying glass by the authorities and by, you know, his job and his soon-to-be ex-wife and the court system, and being fleeced at the same time. And, you know, his trust of everything that he's known to in his life, he is questioning. He's not sure how to go about this situation with this black woman who is currently in the parking lot of his job with a megaphone yelling all kinds of things. He's in the break room and two black men walk in who work at the company, and he wants to speak to one of the black men, and The two black guys look at him, look at each other, have a nonverbal mental symbiosis where, we have this thing. It's a cultural thing. Some people won't understand. Where we look at each other and we're sharing thoughts. We're having this nonverbal thing, and they're thinking to themselves, "Okay, what does this fool want?" And Justin Bartha's character asked, the black guy for advice. And I've seen this black actor, and stuff elsewhere. He's like, Justin Bartha's character's like, what should I do about this woman? And from a black man's perspective, this guy gives him his honest opinion. This is A, this is B. If you should really just give this woman what she wants. Black woman this, black woman that, as a black person this. And Justin, for the rest of the episode, I guess, entertains it. The news breaks out, and which affects his situation with his soon-to-be ex-wife. Legally married still, separated though, separate houses. The weight of this subpoena and the reparations, because they are married, could very well greatly influence her pockets and her accounts and her living situation. So she wants to speed up the divorce, which will definitely complicate things as far as his situation with his daughter. Wife won't even let him come in the house. Soon to be ex-wife won't even let him come in the house. So he has to move into a hotel room. At this point, black people are finding it funny, or are not surprised that this is going on. For some of them in the episode, it's to them it's just the chicken's coming home to roost. Justin Bartha's character is in the lounge area drinking whiskey or something, or bourbon, and is approached by another white guy who's also going through the same thing, and they have a heart-to-heart. Well, it could be just this guy was just giving him something to chew on as to what's going on, because he shares with him his situation with this woman. And it was I wasn't quite sure how to take it, what this guy was saying, but he was definitely troubled, and it was teetering on this guy being a hotep. So I recently looked up that word, which the word came up in like a Twitter thread, and discussing the Brooklyn, New York City subway guy and his YouTube content. I looked it up and I was like, oh, it was Urban Dictionary I went to, and I was like, oh, that's the spin, that's what it means. Which is worlds different than what the word started out as meaning. But I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. Where it's Urban Dictionary essentially defines it as a person who is a conspiracy theorist of some kind and argues against valid scientific stuff with cherry-picked opinions off of shit he finds on the internet to argue. And for your mental health, you should never go back and forth with a hotep type of individual because your brain will explode and your heart might explode. So I was like, oh, okay. So the word lends credibility to what's been put out in the media from about this guy over his YouTube channel. That he was what they said allegedly a black nationalist. And for me, it's like I'm on the fence with that word and what's implied as far as the pushback. It's a slippery slope because it could very well be something positive, like, you know, they want better for the black community. And this kind of veracity and pushback has long been a thing. This kind of thing has been synonymous with like Black Panthers and stuff. And, you know, unfortunately, they too got cast with a broad brushstroke that they were dangerous, that they were a threat to the government, and that they had to be neutralized. They had to be phased out and targeted, and it's like not all of them are like that. So I try to be careful with that. It can be dangerous though. But you know, the Big Payback, you know, this guy was in the lounge area with Justin Bartha's character, and I wasn't quite sure how to feel about what he was saying. Like, is he prejudiced? Is he ignorant, like racially ignorant? Because it kind of came off what he was saying to Justin Bartha. I don't even know the character's name. That he was, he had some prejudices or preconceived things when it comes to black people, especially in a moment where the tables have turned and they have the upper hand finally, and how uncomfortable he was with what was going on as far as black people actually subpoenaing white people for what their ancestors did to their ancestors, and how there needs to be some kind of control over it, or else it could lead to more insanity that they need to control. So after he says what he says, he walks out to the pool area, you know, which is behind Justin Bartha's character. And as Justin Bartha is drinking with his drink, the guy takes out a shotgun and kills himself and falls into the hotel pool. Justin, hearing the shot, turns around, looks out, says, "Oh my God." One of the black hotel workers is not really that fazed. And I'm kind of with him. I'm like, you know, it's par for the course in this context of what's happened so far in the episode. My takeaway from the Big Payback is that I think as a society, it may have to come to that point. You know, money is tied to power, and a lot of power from them is too generously and too liberally exercised. And the only way a shift is going to possibly occur socially and culturally is if you hit them where the money is. Um, and it's unfortunate because a lot of the power and all that comes with it empowers these attitudes that keep us divided. And, that's not only on the social level, but that's in politics, that's in economics, that's in, you know, even from me to you or me and the next person. Um, when you have, people growing up in certain areas or doing certain things, and, they're essentially modeling their lives after their parents, and with that, being taught these things or picking up these things from being around adults that are openly and freely sharing what they were taught, and what they're taught is right. And children growing up around that go out into the world with that. And in certain packs and certain sections, with being brought up with the mantra, do as I say, not as I do. And you're raised not to question or second guess or talk back. This is just what it is. And with this thing that love is equal to loyalty, and with loyalty, you don't cross that. You don't regress or double down off of that. And that comes with a lot. That comes with a lot. And it causes a lot of damage. So that was a great episode. Atlanta got it going on again. Season 3 is really is going to be another one for the books. Season 2 was off the damn hook. Atlanta doesn't have a filler episode to date. Definitely a thought-provoking episode, The Big Payback. This is Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you see us. We're not only on YouTube, we're also on streaming on 8 platforms. Debating whether or not to also start doing some stuff on Twitch to expand the brand. Twitch, I've started game streaming on there. Once Twitch gets their act together and gives me my upload button, I'll be having way more content on there. But until then, this is where I'll be. Be sure to check out the streaming. We're on 8 platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts included. We just uploaded a new episode a couple days ago, and we're not slowing down. So this is Mr. Fox, the I Refuse podcast. Be sure to check out Atlanta. If you don't have FX, they are on Hulu. New episodes, I believe, every Thursday or Friday. I just also checked out the season finale of Abbott Elementary. Another banger. It'll be interesting to see what season 2 brings. I honestly, unpopular opinion, I do not want her, Quinta's character, and Tyler James's character to get together. But I feel like that's where it's headed. Because I kind of feel like once a show starts putting people together, like 2 of the main characters together, it goes in a different direction and just starts becoming something different. That's how I think that's one of the reasons why Living Single just didn't go well. I mean, aside from them firing T.C. Carson and then bringing in a roommate in the main house with the girls. It was just like, ugh, jumping the shark. I just don't want that to happen to Abbott Elementary. I don't know what's going to become, if they're going to circle back with her character dating the rapper guy. I would like to see the dynamic between Tyler James' character and the white male teacher's character become something. Not intimately or romantically, but more like a buddy kind of thing. I like their dynamic really well. I like Lisa Ann Walters' character and Shirley Ralph's character. Whoo! You want to talk about one-liners for your ass. I really hope they do not replace the principal's character. The two of them send me just the back and forth between, I believe it's Ava and Shirley Ralph's character. Abbott Elementary got it going on, and I will be continue to check that out. I really hope that show and the leads sweep award season next year or later this year, especially with the NAACP. Yeah, so Abbott Elementary got it going on, Atlanta got it going on. I'm Mr. 5-Star Reviews Podcast, and we are out. This is my review for Atlanta Season 3, episode 3 and 4. So yeah, check us out and check them out. Peace.